Imagine the most powerful warship ever built. $13 billion of steel, nuclear reactors, and aviation technology, 5,000 sailors, 70 combat aircraft, a ship that can project military power anywhere on Earth within 2 weeks, sustain combat operations for months without returning to port, and put more aircraft in the air than most countries' entire air forces. Now imagine the person in command of all of it. Most people picture an admiral, someone with stars on their collar and decades of fleet command experience. Someone whose name is known at the Pentagon, someone whose authority over the ship, the aircraft, the crew, and the mission is absolute. The single point of command for the most capable conventional military platform ever assembled. That person does not command an aircraft carrier. The officer who commands a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier is a captain, 1 gold star on each shoulder, not 3 or 4. He is an 06, the same rank as an Army colonel, the same rank as an Air Force colonel, the same rank as thousands of other officers across the military who command battalions and wings and regiments. He commands the most powerful surface warship in the history of naval warfare, and he does not control its most powerful weapon. This is the story of what it actually means to command a U.S. Navy aircraft carrier, the selection process, the authority, the command structure that surprises everyone who learns how it actually works, and the daily reality of a job that bears almost no resemblance to what most people imagine when they picture the captain of a $13 billion warship. By the end of this video, you will understand why the most powerful surface warship ever built has 2 commanding officers, neither of whom reports to the other, and why the admiral who actually runs the strike group operations is working from a different level of the same building the captain works from. Stay with me, because the command structure of an aircraft carrier is one of the most unusual arrangements in the history of military command. The captain of an aircraft carrier is not an admiral who got a ship. He is not a senior officer with broad strategic authority over the carrier strike group. He is not in command of the aircraft. He is not in command of the combat operations. He is not the most senior officer on the ship. He is responsible for the ship, the hull, the reactors, the navigation, the safety of 5,000 human beings, the food, the postal service, the legal system, the police force, the medical department, and the engineering spaces. Everything required to keep a 100,000-ton warship operational at sea in any conditions indefinitely. That is the job, and it takes 25 years to get there. To understand what it actually means to command an aircraft carrier, you have to go back to the beginning of a naval officer's career and trace the specific, competitive, decades-long selection process that produces exactly 1 person for this job at any given time. Federal law is explicit on the requirements. To command a nuclear aircraft carrier, an officer must be a naval aviator or a naval flight officer, not a surface warfare officer, not a submarine officer, a naval aviator. The captain of a ship that cannot fly, that has no aerodynamic properties whatsoever, that is powered by a nuclear reactor and steered by rudders, must be a qualified carrier pilot. The logic is not accidental. A carrier is an aircraft delivery system. The captain must understand the aviation mission at the deepest professional level to manage the ship around it. He must know what the pilots need, what the aircraft require, and what the flight deck demands before he can make the navigational and engineering decisions that support those requirements. A non-aviator commanding a carrier would be like a non-pilot commanding an airbase. Technically possible, practically insane. The typical path to carrier command spans approximately 25 years from the day a naval officer is commissioned. In those 25 years, the officer flies tactical aircraft, commands a squadron, serves as executive officer of a carrier, and accumulates a specific sequence of qualifying assignments that the Navy calls a career path, a sequence so competitive that the majority of naval aviators who enter it do not reach the end. The aviation commands are the crucial steps. An officer who does not command a squadron does not command a carrier. An officer who does not serve as executive officer of a carrier does not command one. The selection for carrier command is made by a central panel of admirals who review every eligible officer simultaneously and choose the ones whose records, fitness reports, and professional reputation make them the most competitive. Of the approximately 6,000 officers who enter the Navy as naval aviators in any given decade, fewer than 50 will ever command an aircraft carrier. The officer who gets this command is not assigned it because he is available. He is assigned it because he is the best candidate the Navy has found after 25 years of progressively more demanding selection. He will command the carrier for approximately 2 years. After that, he either gets promoted to Rear Admiral, in which case he will likely command a carrier strike group from the flag bridge of another carrier, or his career ends. Command of an aircraft carrier is the final gate before flag rank. There is nothing between it and retirement except the stars. Here is something most accounts of aircraft carrier command skip entirely. The carrier captain does not work alone. He does not even work as the senior officer on the ship. When an aircraft carrier deploys, it carries 2 separate command structures aboard the same hull, and neither one reports to the other. The first is the ship's commanding officer, the captain. He is responsible for the vessel, navigation, propulsion, damage control, safety, and the welfare of every person aboard. His authority over the physical ship is absolute. Every decision about where the ship goes, how fast it moves, and whether the flight deck is safe for operations runs through him. The second is the Carrier Air Wing Commander, known as the CAG, from the legacy title Commander Air Group. The CAG is also a Navy captain, the same rank as the ship's commanding officer. He is responsible for the readiness, training, and tactical employment of every aircraft and pilot in the air wing. His authority over the aircraft is complete. Every decision about which aircraft fly, when they fly, and what they do once they leave the deck runs through him. Neither the captain nor the CAG reports to the other. Both report simultaneously to the Composite Warfare Commander within the Carrier Strike Group structure. They are, in the formal language of the Navy's own documents, CO commanding officers. The captain of a $13 billion warship carrying 70 combat aircraft does not command those aircraft. That is not his job. That has never been his job. His job is to deliver the ship and everything on it to the place and the conditions where the CAG's aircraft can be launched effectively. He is responsible for getting the aircraft to the fight. What happens after they leave the deck is someone else's mission. Here is the detail that changes how you understand everything about life aboard a carrier. The ship's island superstructure, the tall rectangular building rising from the starboard side of the flight deck, the most visually distinctive feature of any aircraft carrier, contains 2 separate command spaces, one above the other, occupied by 2 separate commanders. The navigation bridge sits at the top of the island. This is where the captain works during flight operations, standing at the forward windows, watching the flight deck, monitoring the ship's heading and speed, making the continuous navigational decisions that position the ship correctly for aircraft launch and recovery. The bridge is the captain's space. His authority over ship movement originates here. One level below is the flag bridge. This is where the embarked Rear Admiral works. He is the commander of the Carrier Strike Group, who controls not just the carrier, but the destroyers, cruisers, submarines, and supply ships that accompany it. The admiral is operationally senior to the captain, but the captain is legally responsible for the ship. The admiral cannot override the captain's authority over the vessel's safety. 2 commanders, 2 levels of the same building, working simultaneously on the same platform with different authorities that intersect but do not cancel each other out. And 1 level above the captain's bridge, in a small glassed-in compartment called Primary Flight Control, known as Pri-Fly, sits the AIR boss. The air boss is not the captain. He is not the CAG. He is typically a commander or captain who holds one specific authority that supersedes everyone else on the ship during flight operations: absolute control over every aircraft launch and recovery on the flight deck. When aircraft are moving, the air boss's word is final, not the captain's, not the CAG's. The air boss watches the flight deck from pry-fly, controls the pace of launch and recovery operations, and can halt everything with a single call if a safety condition appears. His authority during flight operations is designed to be immediate, total, and unquestioned. The captain of the ship, the commanding officer, the person federally and legally responsible for the vessel, does not have authority over individual aircraft movements on his own flight deck when the air boss is working. If you're finding this as fascinating as I am, go ahead and hit the like button. It helps more people find this channel, and the captain's actual daily schedule is the part of this story that changes how you see every photograph of these ships. Here is what the captain of an aircraft carrier actually does with his time. Carriers never sleep. The ship operates 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, regardless of weather, regardless of what is happening on land, regardless of whether it is peacetime or combat. Flight operations can run continuously for days. Maintenance never stops. Navigation never stops. The reactors never stop. And the captain is accountable for all of it, at all hours. A carrier captain's day during flight operations begins before dawn and ends after midnight on a good day. He attends the morning briefing with the embarked admiral and the CAG, the Carrier Air Wing Commander, a structured review of the day's flight schedule, operational requirements, maintenance status, and weather forecasting that establishes the framework for everything that will happen in the next 24 hours. After the briefing, he moves to the bridge to oversee the positioning of the ship for the first flight cycle of the day. Between flight cycles, he meets with his department heads. The engineering officer reports on the reactor plant and propulsion systems. The supply officer reports on provisions, fuel, and ordnance consumption. The executive officer, his second in command, reports on crew issues, discipline, and administrative requirements. The medical officer reports on the health of the crew. The legal officer reports on any judicial matters requiring the captain's authority. The captain has the power to conduct non-judicial punishment, the Navy's equivalent of a summary hearing, for crew members who have violated regulations. He can confine sailors to the brig. He can recommend courts-martial for serious offenses. He runs what is, in practical terms, a self-contained civil and criminal justice system for a population the size of a small town. He also has the authority to perform marriages aboard the ship. A U.S. Navy commanding officer can legally solemnize marriages. Sailors have used this authority. People have been married aboard aircraft carriers. The ceremony is performed by the captain of the ship, and at some point in every day, the captain eats, when he can find the time, in the wardroom with his officers. He sleeps when the operational situation allows, in a sea cabin directly behind the bridge, close enough that he can be on the bridge within 30 seconds of being called. The larger and port cabin he has elsewhere on the ship is used when the pace allows. During heavy operational periods, many days pass without the captain leaving the bridge and sea cabin area at all. Here is what the carrier captain's authority actually is, at its most fundamental. He cannot be ordered to sail his ship into conditions he judges to be unsafe, not by the admiral, not by the strike group commander, not by anyone below the chief of naval operations. The captain of a U.S. Navy vessel is legally and professionally responsible for its safety, and that responsibility cannot be transferred, delegated, or overridden by operational pressure. This is not a theoretical protection. In practice, carrier captains have declined to conduct flight operations in weather conditions they judge dangerous, over the objection of strike group commanders who wanted the flight schedule maintained. The captain's judgment on vessel safety is final. The admiral can replace him if he believes the judgment is wrong, but while he holds the command, the captain's authority over the ship's safety is absolute. That authority, responsibility without the ability to fully delegate it, accountability that cannot be shared, is the defining characteristic of the carrier command. It is also why the selection process takes 25 years. The Navy is not looking for the most aggressive officer, or the most politically connected, or the one with the most combat experience. It is looking for the officer who can be trusted with absolute, non-delegable responsibility for 5,000 lives and $13 billion of irreplaceable hardware in any ocean, under any conditions, for 2 years. That officer does not appear quickly. He is built, over 25 years by a career designed to test every capability the command requires. Here is what the captain of an aircraft carrier actually is, when you strip away the mythology and look at the record plainly. He is the most thoroughly selected officer in the United States military. He commands the most complex machine his country has ever sent to sea. He is responsible for more people than most generals ever directly command. He holds a justice system, a medical system, a food production system, a nuclear power plant, and a 4.5-acre flight deck as parts of the same job. He does not control the aircraft on his ship. He does not command the strike group operations. He does not have absolute authority over every decision made on his flight deck. Two other officers of equal or higher rank work from the same building on different levels, with authorities that complement and sometimes constrain his own. What he has, what no one can take from him and no one can share, is responsibility for every person aboard, for every system running, for every mile the ship travels, and every decision made in its name. When something goes wrong on a carrier, the captain is accountable. That is not a figure of speech. It is the legal and professional foundation of naval command. The carrier captain is the person who makes everything else possible. He doesn't pull the trigger. He makes sure the trigger is ready to be pulled by someone who knows exactly what they are doing, in exactly the right place, at exactly the right time. The rest is someone else's job. That has always been the deal. What surprised you most about how aircraft carrier command actually works? Drop it in the comments. I read every one. Thanks for watching. If you want the real stories behind the engineering decisions and unexpected turns that shaped the most famous warships ever built, subscribe. New video every week. The next one is already stranger than you would expect.